Hi, everyone. We'll
Hello,
give folks
everyone.
good.
Hello.
We'll give folks just another minute to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're about 2 minutes in, so why don't we go ahead and get started. My name's Brian Russell. I am the product manager on Google's open source security team. I work with a few different projects in the OpenSSF, including Scorecards. I'll be facilitating today. And I just want to thank you all for coming. If you haven't attended one of these meetings before, there is a document attached to the meeting invite, which will link you to the notes that you're seeing on screen and has a list of who's attending. If it's your first time attending, please add your name to the attendees. And if you've been before, hopefully your name's there. Go ahead and just make sure it's highlighted so that we can see you've attended. Before we get into the main part of the agenda, is there anyone here who hasn't attended before? Could you just introduce yourself, maybe say what brought you to the meeting today?
I'm new, Justin Abrams, and I want to talk about SBOM scorecard inclusion possibilities.
Fantastic. Welcome, Justin. I think I recognize everyone else, but if there's anyone else, go ahead and introduce yourself right now. All right, well, let's go ahead and just jump into the agenda. Say if there are any topics you don't see on here that you think should be added. I think our agenda is light enough today. You could just jump in quick to the doc and just add a topic towards the end. But we'll go ahead and jump into the first one, which is All-Star. Not sure exactly who had it, but Jeff, I'm guessing it's you.
Yeah, so just project updates here. We had an issue updating to the latest scorecard. It was using a lot more memory than it used to, and it turns out it's the transport we were passing in was mostly for authentication, but it's also for we also have caching attached to it. And it was an old change, but Scorecard is now using that transport for tarball downloads, which is good, so that it can download tarballs for private repositories. But it also means that our cache is overflowing. So I need to figure out a way to pass an authentication into Scorecard when calling it as a library, but not have it cache the tarball, or maybe not have it cache at all. Anyways, so that's kind of what's been going on in the project. Some other not many other updates there, but that's what we've been working on lately. So just an update here, not a discussion topic.
Well, thanks, Jeff, for the update. Then on the Scorecard side, if there's any announcements that you think should be in here, go ahead and just, you can either add them to the doc, or if you want to say them right now, great too. Otherwise, I think we can go ahead and jump into our other issues. And I'm guessing, Justin, this is yours.
That's mine. So I have a utility called SBOM Scorecard, and as the name implies, it scores SBOMs. I think that it may make sense to include that within the broader security scorecard. There's an issue about it, which is linked to the document. There was some interest, and I'm here to figure out what needs to happen to push that forward.
Great. I guess, do you just have a sense of where things are at right now? Are there any significant concerns that, would be helpful just to discuss in this meeting?
I don't have specific concerns. It's mostly how do I get from here to the destination? What do you want from me to make that happen? I'm happy to contribute code or whatever. Just I need to know what you'd like.
So I'll just say we've definitely taken in contributions before. I think as a general rule, code is appreciated. I'm wondering though, for folks that have merged in things, are there specific places you'd recommend to get started? I'm thinking either Spencer or Rogoff. Any recommendations just for Justin?
Yeah, I'm checking out the issue right now. I think how something would be included would determine sort of where. So I'm just gonna look at the issue real quick.
I mean, I would say already a good start, just having an issue open. Usually a lot of our discussion is just done on GitHub. I think, generally when issues are open, we look for just a general criteria of, does this really help advance scorecards, and does it change anything fundamental about it? Based on what you've said it does, it doesn't sound like it's a major change to scorecard itself. It's extending what it does and basically making it work better with SBOM.
Yep, that's right. And a user named Laurent Simon suggested that I attend this meeting to discuss, to propose the idea.
Great. Maybe, go ahead.
I think it was in this call, last time we had this call, I believe it was, somebody brought up another tool that kind of had some similar overlap here. And we were going to see if we could get people together to kind of see if there was opportunities for collaboration or if there was not significant overlap. It might be in the meeting notice, the minutes from last meeting, but I forget who the gentleman was. He'd been at a conference and kind of got, might have been Hip Check.
You're probably talking about David Wheeler, right?
Yes, I was. Yep.
I'll say a lot of times David does attend this meeting, but he couldn't make it today. I think that the best way to maybe move it forward is just, I think, two things. One, for this meeting, if you could just maybe share a little bit more, Justin, about who you anticipate using the feature and what kind of core problem it solves. I think
Sure,
that's helpful just for the whole group.
yeah. So there's a lot of push to generate SBOMs, and I think that's well founded. But it turns out that the quality of SBOMs is questionable, and I have a large number of SBOMs that can kind of back that up. Some are not even spec compliant. Some don't list the version of the package being used. Some don't say what's the identifier for this piece of software? Like, how do I know that this is what it is? And so the intent of the SBOM scorecard is simply to assign a grade to an SBOM and say, yeah, this does actually have the relevant pieces of information needed to have actionable insights. like if there's a security vulnerability, I would be able to tie that back to this piece of software at this version, etc.
And if I could just ask again, how does it kind of do that such that it can make that determination?
Sure. It ingests a flat file of an SBOM and looks at the elements of it, and it will say things like 30% of your packages that you've listed here have associated versions. That's not great. Or you don't have any package URLs here, so we don't know how to actually trace that back to any sort of known identifier of a repository. Or we don't know how this SBOM was made. So there's a handful of different things that it looks for, but it's all based on the context provided within the SBOM itself.
I would definitely second that we see a lot of issues around SBOM quality. I think it would be helpful to be able to have a project that, you know, scores at, and obviously that's useful standalone. It'll be interesting to see exactly what your vision for integrating that into the overall score is.
Yeah, I'll echo that.
Yeah.
Just where in the issue you linked, I think you said that for your 2 cents, you should put the SBOM along the artifact and not in source control. So I'm curious what role, or I guess how you would include it with Scorecard.
So today's Scorecard is entirely based on what's in version control. Is that right?
It runs on a GitHub or soon a GitLab repository. So it's very source control based and configuration based.
So it should be able to, like, if I had access to a GitHub API, I could look at the releases that have been made for a given project and see if there are SBOMs associated or in-toto attestations, like those sorts of artifacts that are included along with it. And I think that is still within the realm of give me your GitHub URL or your GitLab URL and being able to infer it from that. I don't know if that's additional scope creep for the project that is not welcome.
So I think based on what you just said, it definitely fits better with sort of the release check, which we have a check for, and not necessarily the binary artifact stage, which is the issue that was linked in the agenda. But yes, I'm trying to remember. I think we just checked that there's a publishing workflow, although I might be confusing it with packaging. But I think having an issue to discuss or just changing the issue to mention the release workflow would fit better with sort of the Scorecard frame. So that sounds reasonable for me.
Any other thoughts from anyone else on that? Does that make sense, what Spencer's suggesting?
I mean, this is a nitpicky thing, but okay, we got a project. How will you find the actual SBOMs? I guess just looking at the file name extensions, is that kind of just walking through the files, or assume they're at the top level? Or, I mean, that's a low level question, but we do need an answer for it.
Yeah, I think that I'm very happy to build in functionality to say, is this an SBOM, yes or no, within the context of the SBOM scorecard. And then we could just try files and see if they are in fact SBOMs that are known to the project.
I can include a link, but Google has a utility called OSV Scanner, and they had this sort of like, how do we determine what an SBOM is? And there's, you know, some naming conventions that people may or may not follow. And I will link the issue and put it in the agenda.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Spencer. So I would say, I think on the issue itself, there's maybe a few things just to clarify, to add to it based on the feedback here. One is, let's maybe adjust where exactly this would, or which check this would exactly be linked to, and then maybe kind of just describe the general method that you're planning to find SBOMs, and that'll, you know, also be, I think, a natural place to discuss pulling in things like the OSV tooling, seeing if there's something to be used there. Otherwise, you know, I think what we could do is clarify a few of those things on the issue, and then either we'll close it out on the issue, or we could bring it back to the meeting if there's a lot of back and forth on it.
Okay, so I'll make those 2 adjustments to the ticket, and then the assumption is that people will engage on that ticket and direct me forward on how to do something else.
Yeah, that should be a pretty good path forward. Thank you again just for bringing it to the group. I think that's an exciting extension. Other topics that folks want to bring up, or also last chance to chime in on this one.
A quick first chime in, which is I'm excited. I'm sure there'll be complications when you actually try to do things, because there always are, but I think this looks very promising. And I do have a totally different topic that I wanted to talk about real quick. Last minute proposal on the agenda, so I understand if you don't want it, but
I'd say we're doing good on time. We've just got a few announcements at the end, and we definitely have time to take on another topic.
Okay, this one's really just more of a heads up. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share my screen real quickly here.
Sure.
So let's see here. Let's see if I can manage to push the right button. I can push buttons. Let's see if I can push the right button. All right, this horrible thing pretends to be my desktop. So basically, Krob and I are going to be giving a brief overview on both the OpenSSF Best Practices Badge and Scorecard. And we're a little bit, both of us are kind of too many things, trying to do too many things. And so we're right now trying to wrap up the Scorecard presentation. This is not the final, this is the start of it though. But I just wanted to talk about some of the things that we intend to talk about, and basically see if there's, you know, anything that, oh my gosh, you messed it, you missed something important, or, you know, in particular missed something important or got something wrong. I'm not going to go through details because I presume that all of us have some idea what Scorecard is, but hey, there's Scorecard, automatically scores OSS with a bunch of checks 0 through 10. You know, listing some of the sample checks. You know, I said I'm playing, you know, and you know, and it gives an aggregate score. Some of this is duplicative, and we really need to get this down. But I'm just, you know, right now this is the starting point, and then we're going to clean it up. I intend to talk briefly about sonotypes analysis. I think that's really interesting. So, you know, I mean, that's really sonotypes analysis, not your own, but I think it's helpful to know that in particular, and, you know, that some of them, you know, that, hey, it looked good overall, and that those 4 in particular were interesting. I did, by the way, find it very, very interesting. I think nobody was surprised that code review and branch protection were important. I think a number of people were surprised that checked-in binaries and pinning dependencies were so predictive, but they are. So let's give credit for that. I also wanted, so, you know, we know we need to do cleanups, but, you know, that's kind of where we're going. Wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming Scorecard work. I think we ought to mention that GitLab progress is ongoing. Lockheed's been doing it. As far as I know, that's not a secret. So I think we should, you know, both that it's happening and who's working it. improving automation in general with better support for different kinds of pipelines, better tool detection. I know that that Amazon is funding that work. I know there's been talk about potential new metrics. MTD, and maybe I should even mention the SBOM, SBOM scorecards as something that's a potential new metric, and some various cleanups. All right, and finally, this is my pitch about how to explain these two projects. Okay, my pitch is that the best practices badge and scorecard both work together, can work together. They take very different approaches to it. Scorecard, I mean, the big advantage of it is that projects don't need to do anything. You can just measure them and you can get quick results on any project. That's a real big plus. That contrasts pretty obviously with a badge where it requires best practices, requires project participation, generally about 20, 30 minutes. There is some automation, but a lot of it is, it's still a form fill in. What are the negatives though? And I don't think these are killing, it's just I'm trying to do a contrast. The big challenge with Scorecard is the challenge for all tools, which is you've got false positives, false negatives. I think that's just, maybe I should even say, like all tools right here. It's prone to false positives and false negatives. Something like that. Okay. Detecting tools, detecting the CI system, the detecting a file is not, the presence of a file does not mean that something useful is happening necessarily. It's a good sign. Currently it only does GitHub, GitLab's coming, and it can only report on things that are automatable. Best practices badge, it works with any forge, and it can report on what's important, with the caveat that that requires human analysis, which is the challenge. So the theory here is they should work together like chocolate and peanut butter. Okay, so thoughts, comments. I think this. I'm trying to be fair to both sides, because I think each of them has their pluses and minuses because of the approaches that they've taken. Seem plausible?
I'll say personally, I think this is a really nice way of laying them both out. I'm wondering, just in this last comparison, if you were to say, Scorecards is automated, best practices badge is manual, if that would just immediately kind of get in people's heads. This is the significant.
This is part of a larger brief where it talks a lot about it. And the problem is, if I just say it's manual, it's not actually true, because there's something like a quarter or a third of them that actually are automated. The difference is, if there's no automation, in most cases you can override, unless the automation determines that the human claim is false. So there's automation to figure out the defaults, but to deal with the false positives and false negatives, in most cases humans can override. So it's a simple way to describe it, but it's not actually quite true. It's more subtle, but it does require project participation, and that, I think, is the difference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the mix of the two is just, I think, what maybe didn't come through for me right away, that there is some automated and some manual for best practices.
Right, and I didn't want to show that part because limited time. I mean, if you want to talk with me offline, happy to do that. And sorry that we're not quite as far along on the actual slides, but we're getting there. But we're not very worried about this because I think scorecards are known quantity, but we want to make sure that people who aren't aware of scorecard will become aware and start using it.
We definitely all want that. When it comes to, again, who the audience is, this is, I think you said, for OpenSSF Day?
Yeah.
Great.
So, okay, that's all. I just wanted to give, even though we're not quite as far along as we wanted to be, I wanted to share that now, so that if there's something wrong, and really, is there something important that I missed? We need to clean up the slides and eliminate the dupes, but is there something that was really important that we didn't include?
So I'm watching for hands here. I don't see any yet. Does anyone else have any other thoughts?
I would say the one thing that, having gone through the best practices badge, knowing that there's levels is important, because it's like real effort to do level 1, and then you're like, oh wait, there's more. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yep. Now, and to be fair, for the best practices badge, we have silver, we have gold. We encourage projects to get them, but the reality is, we've been from a. And this is not really scorecards relevant, but what the heck? You asked the question. For badging, we've been focusing on our messages, focusing on getting people to the passing level. We do, for the ones that are important, we want them to go beyond, but the theory right now is that if you're not even at the passing level, you're probably the biggest risk. And, you know, for the projects that are used everywhere and really security critical, absolutely, we want you to go higher, kernels and so on. But, you know, if you don't have a way to report vulnerabilities and you don't have any tools and that sort of thing, we're more worried. So that's where we've been focusing on our messaging anyway.
Great. Any other feedback? I think before we've got another presentation announcement that Spencer's adding right now. All right, Spencer, if you want to just give a quick note then.
Oh, yeah, just that David reminded me that this is a great forum to get feedback on for something like a talk. So Naveen and I are giving a brief talk on SigStore and how Scorecard Action uses it when we sort of crowdsource some scorecard scores that feed into the API. So David jokes that, you know, his slides aren't done, but ours are even less finalized. But I'm looking at 2 weeks from now, and it's still before the conference. So I might bring that forward in next week or next meeting.
I think that'd be great. And unless there's any other topics to add, we should talk about that next meeting and see if I can get a volunteer for a facilitator, unless we already have one. Nope. So this would be May 3rd, I believe. Sorry, May 4th. Jeff, is that, are you volunteering?
No, I had a question.
Okay.
If it was an open agenda, let me find the.
Yeah, it's back to open.
Okay. I was looking at the README. Is there any generalized guidance for pulling in scorecard data? I know we have the API, the REST API, and there is BigQuery. I don't know if that's available publicly, and then there's also deps.dev. I think it'd be nice to have like a comparison between the three, and if you're building an integration that needs to pull data, like which one is the one you should use. Or if anybody has anything to say about that right now, that'd be appreciated.
I would agree that a comparison would be good. You know, when each of these became available, they built on something that wasn't there before. So I think BigQuery was initially made publicly available. An API was built on top of that to make it easier to access. And since that time, you know, deps.dev is a large consumer of that data. They started making a public API available to themselves as of just a few days ago. So I don't know if anyone has a strong feeling that they would like to be part of that evaluation. Otherwise, I will see if I can round up some participants, because I'd agree that's an important thing to do. Right.
Yeah.
It's like I'll be asking around for some help on that.
Yeah, I was looking. I saw the REST APIs on the README. I don't know if any of the others are. But yeah, right now for the Guac project, we're pulling in deps.dev. And yeah, I didn't know if it would make sense to do one or any of the other ones.
I'll give the disclaimer: deps.dev is a Google project, so it's not in the OpenSSF. I can speak just as being a little bit familiar with that project. My understanding is their API is open for use, and basically what you're using it for now would appear to fall within the terms of what is acceptable to use it for. I don't know if anyone else has other thoughts on that. I think a lot of this will come down to kind of just pros and cons of each one.
Yeah, I will add that deps.dev does filter some data out. So if you want the complete picture, definitely stick with BigQuery or the REST API.
Okay, cool.
That's news to me. What does it filter out?
There's a couple checks that were previously enabled in the cron job and are still being tweaked under our new GitHub app approach, where the data were not, it changes a lot week to week, and it may differ from what projects previously had. So just while Scorecard works on figuring it out, deps.dev is hiding some of those values.
So I think, to be clear, they're intending that part to be temporary. In the long term, they surface all of it.
Correct.
Okay. So this is just while they're retooling some things.
Yeah, and are there any plans to like merge the two? Like, I'd hate to build a integration on the REST API if tomorrow you say, I just pull it from deps.dev.
So, at least to my knowledge, there is no any plan to do that. I think doing an evaluation of all of the ways to access the data, though, is a start towards, does that even make sense? Is that something we should be talking about? So yeah, I will no doubt be maybe twisting some arms, seeing if I can get some help to build out that comparison.
All right, thanks a lot, Brian.
And Ian, I apologize. I think your hand up you've had a hand up for a while. Go ahead.
No worries. It was I'm happy to facilitate the next meeting. So it's irrelevant to the discussion.
Fantastic. That was the hand I was looking for all along. So any other last topics or comments about previous things before we would dismiss?
I do have one minor one. I think it's it's a small note. My employer, we talk a lot to GitLab. So we had another meeting last week where we talked to the chief product officer and some other folks. And so we made our desire to get them involved here very clear. And I know Azim and Raghav are on it, but there's a public channel that they created specifically to support this activity. So if you need to reach out directly to like the GitLab leadership, his name is Sam White. He is the product manager in front of all their governance stuff. So he's very much aware of this and created that Slack channel specifically to help this team out. So if there's anything you need from GitLab, I know you're already talking to them a little bit, but this would be another really good way to reach out and make any needs known.
That's a really positive development for the project, and thank you just for making us all aware that we can have that channel. All right, last call for any other topics.
It's not a different topic. It's not a different topic, but on the whole, deps.dev versus, if somebody has a good way of summarizing how they compare, that would be very useful for a slide that I might have to make soon. So if somebody has thoughts on that between now and next meeting, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm guessing I will not have that by next meeting. So very much if you have this already or could compile quick thoughts, between now and then, it sounds like both David and all of the audience members in that presentation would appreciate it. All right. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything at this point. Very, very, very last call for any last topics. We've got a facilitator for next time. All right, going once, going twice. See you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you all.
See you.